I cannot say where exactly my town is, as if you end up in it, you most likely will not survive your travels through it. I will say that it is in the eastern half of the United States and bores some very interesting characteristics. This is why, officially at least, our town doesn't exist. Our town is part of a swath of unincorporated territory that stretches for what seems to be 100 miles. We are one of the southernmost points in this territory, and the only point in which there is an actual grocery store and a McDonald's. Our town holds about 2,000 or so residents and has some very neat perks to it that I have enjoyed up into my adulthood. And while every town in America has some sort of dark past, I think mine takes the cake for having a history of violence and mystery. If you think I'm kidding or exaggerating, let me give you some examples right off the top of my head. Since I was 6, I can remember a child disappearing every year on April 23rd. Every year the child would be reported missing at exactly 11:45 a.m. local time, and an Amber Alert would go out. Every year, on April 27th, at exactly 9 p.m., their mutilated corpse would be found. It would always be within a quarter of a mile from where the first boy appeared back in 2004. Also, a large oak tree would always have a foreign symbol carved into it after one of these disappearances, and the symbol was different every time. I remember back when the first child disappeared and this sick trend began to plague our town. The missing boy's name was Timothy Ulrich, and he was found dead by Officer Gwen Swanson right on the banks of the local river. It's a large river, not as large as the mighty Colorado River per se, but it does have the strength to help give electricity to the nearest city. The year after that, little Olivia Gallant was found weighted down at the bottom of the said river. Another odd pattern that is probably worth noting is that every single one of these children had turned 8 years old less than a month ago. Luckily, I turned 8 in September and didn't have to worry about ending up in this situation. But my friend Tommy had a sister who died in this mysterious way about 5 years ago. This case has been open for years, and yet there has never been any advancement into catching whoever or whatever is doing this to the town children. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I was visiting a family friend once in Boulder, Colorado. I had just turned 18 and wanted to see them one last time before I head off to my start of the American dream at the University of Florida. I received a text on a Friday night from my mother, telling me that my dad was dying and that I needed to come home immediately. I have always been incredibly close with my father to the point where my mother and I have had many spats over it, so I immediately raced to the airport to see when I would be able to catch a plane home. There wouldn't be one for almost 8 hours, and it was almost a 10-hour flight with a layover, so it was likely I'd hit home faster if I drove. I floored it for almost 12 straight hours as I made my way back to see my dying father, only to discover a multitude of oddities. First of all, my father was completely fine, which was a huge relief. However, when I told them about the text, it didn't exist. I never received a text from my mom saying that my dad was in critical condition and on his deathbed. Exactly a week after this, my father suffered a massive heart attack and was admitted to the local hospital in critical condition. He survived and is still with us nearly a year and a half after this incident, but it just goes to show some of the freaky events that occur within this town. Currently, I am not attending the University of Florida. According to them, I was never once on any roster or in the system at all. I feel like this town has something to do with this, but there is nothing I can do about it now. Now I am working at the grocery store as a bag boy, which is just a load of fun. However, I've also had some freaky experiences here while working. I once bagged the groceries for a talking dog. After that, I took my break and had my boss drug test me to make sure someone didn't accidentally slip me something. My coworker, Victoria, vouched for me when I told him about what I saw. I also once bagged the groceries for a man who looked and acted a lot like Charles Manson. His driver's license even said he was from California. I only know this because we have to see valid ID to sell people alcohol. We've had a few Benjamin Button cases in this town. His name wasn't Charles Manson, though. It said the man's name was Jack Withers. Once in the back room, I found a jar of human fingers, one of which was still moving. One of the butchers, David, tossed it in the garbage and said, "We don't need that, don't worry about it." The point is, there's a lot of freaky shit that goes on in this town. It doesn't exist on any map because no one wants more fatalities on this town's record. There's been a total of 600 deaths within town limits in the time that this town has been incorporated, and the people who haven't lived here their whole lives really won't understand our ways of life to keep us from meeting horrible fates. A great example would be of this hipsterish couple that moved onto Mulberry Way. Once the sun goes down, you never open your door on Mulberry Way, as there are humanoid monsters that feast on human flesh that live in the woods around that area. This couple didn't know this and evidently answered the door for someone around 10:45. All the clocks in the house had stopped, something else that happens when one of these slaughters takes place. That house was being cleaned out for at least a week after that, and all of the flooring in the downstairs had to be replaced. That house is abandoned now, as no one in town was willing to buy it. Who would want to live on Mulberry Lane? Now you may be thinking something like, why the hell is he telling these stories now? Well, last weekend, Victoria and I were grabbing some coffee before work when we noticed some strange black vans in front of the town hall. All week, everyone in our town has been noticing them creeping through our peaceful and mysterious little hamlet, and we have no idea who the hell these guys are. What I do know is that my boss went missing 2 days ago, along with 8 other people. All of these disappearances have been occurring ever since those vans showed up. I talked to my dad's friend, Rick, who has lived in this town for all 68 years of his life, and he is genuinely freaked out by these vans showing up. He's lived through all the strange events that have befallen this town for the past 68 years, served in Vietnam, and was supposed to be on the plane that hit the South Tower on 9/11. Nothing freaks this man out. I'm just worried a whole new threat may have come to our town that technically doesn't even exist. It was raining on Friday. The rains came sporadically throughout the day. Sometimes it was no more than a light mist or maybe a bit of a drizzle. Sometimes it would be a heavy downpour. I was stuck in my apartment for most of the day, so I mostly just watched Netflix and such. Evidently, the 5th season of Arrested Development was split into 2 parts. Either way, I didn't enjoy it all that much. That is not the point of me writing this, though. I would have been on a completely different forum if all I wanted to do was discuss that show, which I did go to at one point. One of the vans showed up across the street from my apartment building. I had no idea why and not even a clue as to why they were here. The oddities of the town had been dying down as of recently, so I had no idea as to what prompted their sudden reappearance. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, I got a text from Victoria. She was hiding in her closet because someone had come out of the can parked by her house and broke in the back door. I instantly called the police, but apparently all circuits were busy. At that very moment, I heard my entry door being tampered with, and I went to hide in the crawlspace behind my bed. I must have been there for 10 minutes before the door actually opened and 2 men dressed completely in black came inside. They came right over to the crawlspace and began speaking to me. "Mr. Benson, we are not here to hurt you. We just want to talk about the event that occurred last Thursday at the Sullivan Baseball Diamond," one of them said. I was so confused. I hadn't heard of any event that had happened at the Sullivan Baseball Diamond. Hell, I didn't even know this town had a baseball diamond to begin with. That's exactly what I told them once they convinced me to crawl out of my crawl space. Turns out that's why they were here. The taller one introduced himself as Davis. He said he and his partner Krasinski were both here searching for the employees of one Bob Valerio, my boss at the grocery store. They were told by their superior to retrieve them by any means necessary and were happy that they got me to cooperate. After that, Davis told me to grab a coat, my keys, and anything else I absolutely need for the next couple days, before he and Krasinski escorted me to the black van parked outside. The rain had frozen in mid-fall, something that happened about once a year in my town. What made me unnerved was the fact that Davis and Krasinski seemed completely unfazed by this. They barely noticed that raindrops were just suspended in mid-air. Once I was inside the van, I heard Krasinski's phone ringing. He answered, and for the first time I heard his voice. It was deep, gruff, and he had a thick German accent. "Do you have Victoria?" he said. On the other end of the line, I heard a voice say, "Yeah, we got her. Although Simpson and Duval are having a tough time with the one on Baxter Street. Tell them to do what they have to do." James Duncan lived on Baxter Street. He was the only survivor of his mentally ill father slaughtering his entire family with a hatchet when he was 9 years old. Evidently, his father claimed that all of his family members had been possessed by the woman in black, who lived at the edge of the woods, but the penal system in my state doesn't really recognize just how odd our town is. James inherited the house but had to work full-time at the grocery store to keep it. I also knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. When we all arrived at the grocery store, I was right when I saw that James had a large gash on the side of his face. We also saw the men in the vans had managed to get our co-workers Katie, Oz, and Lily. We all took a seat in the back room before Davis and one of the men that had escorted James in ushered the other men back outside. "What the fuck is going on here?" James asked. "Why are you here?" Davis turned to the other man, as if asking for permission to continue non-verbally. Then he began to explain our situation with, "My name is Davis, and this is Langdon. We are from a special government agency that monitors towns like this across the United States that have certain oddities, shall we say. Oddities like kids going missing every April 23rd or the things in the woods on Mulberry Lane?" Lily asked. "Or what about the radio station that announces when celebrities are going to die 3 hours before they do? What about the hellhound in the basement of the library? What about the fact that fucking rain stopped falling in mid-air?" "Oddities like all of the things you just listed," Langdon interjected. "Now would you let Davis explain what is going on and kindly shut up?" Langdon gets very sassy like that. I like him. "Thanks, Langdon," Davis said. "Well, we're here because of the event that took place this past Thursday at the Sullivan Baseball Diamond." "Hold up," Oz began. "This town has a baseball diamond?" "No, it doesn't," Davis explained. "And that's why we're here. We're aware that your boss, Bob Valerio, went missing around the time this baseball diamond appeared." "Wait, that's wrong," Katie interjected. "Bob went missing Tuesday. Him and 8 other people. I think Linda Atkins was one of them. Her cats got out of her house yesterday, and the black one got into my pantry. She never lets her cats out." Davis and Langdon both looked at each other. They were petrified by what Katie had just said. Davis turned back to Katie and asked, "Are you positive it was Tuesday?" "That, or very early Wednesday morning. He was supposed to open up the store at 5 in the morning and he never showed up. I got here at 6 and the place wasn't even touched, besides the jar of fingers popping up on aisle 4 again." She paused for a moment. "I mean, I'm guessing Tuesday because that's when a bunch of people started going missing. He left around 1 in the afternoon and no one saw him after that." Davis and Langdon turned to each other again and began whispering to each other. After that, Langdon rushed to the door and called for Krasinski and one of the other men. He told them to go to the baseball diamond and start digging. Victoria then asked Davis a question to something she'd caught on to earlier. "There are other towns like us?" Turns out there's one on the West Coast and one in some of the northernmost regions of Alaska. If you've ever heard stories about non-natives coming up to Alaska and going crazy before wandering off into the wilderness and never being seen again, they're most likely from this town. It also turns out that all of the missing people were found in a mass grave, under the baseball diamond, right under the pitcher's mound. Their rate of decay was startling, and their bones were sent to a laboratory in rural Montana that this agency owns. Davis and Langdon are awaiting the results. I went back to my apartment around 3 o'clock this morning, after we were all forced to stay in the fallout shelter under the town hall for 6 hours, according to the protocol Davis told us about. When I came home, I found Roland, a man who believes he is a vampire, sitting in my recliner chair and drinking a bottle of Nesquik. "What the fuck are you doing here?" I asked him, irritated and just wanting to go to bed. You remember the bobbing head in the pond back behind the apartments? He asked. Is it back? I asked. Yep, he told me as he rose to his feet and walked out of my apartment. Lock your windows. Yeah, I know what to do. I locked all my windows and then crawled into bed. I've had to deal with the bobbing head before, and it is not anything I was up for after this day. It had been very long and very rough for a lot of reasons, and now I wasn't sure if I had a job or not. I woke up about an hour ago and saw that my phone was dead. I went out to the kitchen and plugged it in before I poured myself a bowl of good old Lucky Charms and sat in my recliner while aimlessly browsing the endless selection of shows Netflix had. I eventually settled on just re-binging American Horror Story for the second time this year. Now I am writing this. I know you guys want me to tell you some more shit that has happened over my 21 years living in this town. I feel like you guys would love the shit out of the Strawberry Man, but I don't have time for that. After I post this, I need to go to the grocery store. Evidently Bob is back, and he's acting very strange. It's been a hot minute since I posted, but good God do I have something to tell you guys. After I posted my update last Saturday at around noon, I went down to the grocery store where lo and behold, I saw Bob with my own two eyes. Victoria and Lily were also there, and James was supposedly coming down too. Bob, what the fuck are you doing here? I asked him. Well, I think I should wait until James gets here so I can explain it to him as well, Bob told me. And what about Katie and Oz? Victoria asked. I ran into Katie last night and told her already, and Oz got lost in one of those snake forts again, Bob explained. I only know that because I saw him outside of it and, well, you guys remember what happened last time. I'll explain the snake forts later. We barely had a moment to think about what Bob told us before James came into the store and was shocked just like I was to see our supposedly dead boss standing before us, looking more lively than he had in the past few months. Well, I guess there's no point in waiting for the agents to get here. They already know, Bob said, avoiding eye contact with any of us. So the guys who were here yesterday are involved? Victoria asked. Why the hell doesn't that surprise me? What none of us knew is that they wouldn't be here for a long time. Krasinski and one of the men who took James to the store, by force, on Friday stayed in a house on Mulberry Lane on Friday night and forgot to follow the code of conduct everyone in this town knows pretty goddamn well. For someone who is supposedly analyzing the anomalies of this town, they weren't doing a very good job at it. I guess that's why Davis and Moore were late coming to the store on Saturday afternoon. A few months ago, I started feeling really under the weather. I told everyone here that I had pneumonia, but that was not the case. He bowed his head for a moment. I remember driving along the old dirt road by Chester's garage and having a coughing fit. I pulled over and tried to give myself a moment to breathe, and then I don't remember anything until Thursday night. He scratched his temple. I was standing in the middle of the field that was right next to that dirt road. I looked at the condominiums across the street, and they all looked dead. Then I wandered back towards town and came across Davis. And now I'm here. I paused. Things were starting to make a bit of sense now. So, is that why we were all huddled up in that bunker last night? Davis said something about an artificial being roaming the woods around the quarry, so I don't think so, James informed me. When did you talk to him? I asked. Like 3 hours ago when he came through to make sure the grocery store was still shut down. He said, "We can't take any chances." I paused again. Victoria kept asking Bob questions, but I was more focused on the fact that all of my rational thoughts had just imploded, and now I was stuck in this twisted mystery. Nothing here really added up. We waited for another 2 hours before Davis showed up. He was alone as Langdon, Moore, and the other men were still cleaning up the mess made by Mulberry Lane. The house they stayed in would be torn down a day later due to something awful in the basement. I have no idea what they found, but it can't be good. We all grilled him about being late and what the fuck was happening with Bob, naturally, and he didn't have a much better explanation than Bob. From what I can tell, it seems he contracted one of the viruses we keep in the basement of the EZ Mart. My best guess would be Homestrucks, an ancient virus we found on a dig in New Mexico. It causes a coma that lasts for anywhere from 2 to 8 months and has flu-like symptoms leading up to the coma. He paused. I could see sweat beads breaking out on his forehead. The problem is this: we don't know how it got out. This also still doesn't explain how the fake Bob was here for so long, and why we found his remains in the baseball diamond. That's really all we got from Davis. As of right now, Bob is still legally dead. We have no idea what to expect about the other 8 people who were found to be dead in the baseball diamond. Naturally, when it comes to this town, the story doesn't end there. Sunday went by without incident. All I really did was lounge in my apartment and begin looking for other jobs, as I knew the grocery store wouldn't be open for a long time and I'd end up being evicted soon enough. However, this town had a sick April Fool's joke waiting for all of us. I woke up yesterday morning to about 10 different texts and 2 voicemails. I have the tendency to sleep like the dead once I actually manage to get comfortable, which is something everyone hates. I even tried to make my ringtone a Slipknot song so that I would actually wake up, but evidently that doesn't work either. To sum it all up, the house that the agents tore down on Mulberry Street had a tunnel running underneath the ground. Smoke was coming out of it, and when Moore entered, he could see a faint orange glow far ahead. Lily called me not even 5 minutes after I had woke up and demanded that I get my ass down there. Of course, I obliged. When I arrived at the scene, I saw that Langdon and one of the other agents that I had seen with James on Friday were inside one of the black vans, fiddling with equipment. Langdon looked up for a brief moment and made eye contact with me. I could have sworn that there was fear swirling around in his eyes. He jumped out of the van and ran over to me. "Mark, I need you to go over to the house for a second. Stand over by Victoria and Lily." Again, I obliged. I walked across the lawn and over towards the hole in the ground that had formed when the house was demolished. He went back into the van and closed the door this time. It was maybe 10 minutes later that he and the other man came out, looking absolutely petrified. In the meantime, Moore was setting up a large canopy tent, and Davis was setting up 2 tables with a multitude of laptops and other pieces of advanced technology. "What do you think is going on?" Victoria asked me. "I have no idea, but if these guys know about everything that goes on in this town, and they're scared, then I think we're going to be shitting our pants at whatever they find," I told her. Langdon came over to us. "You're all free to go back to your homes. I think we got what we need." I couldn't understand what the fuck was going on. I went back home and watched more Netflix, as I had all the time in the world apparently, but I never really watched it. I kept thinking about how weird the events of the past day had been. What had they found under the house? I knew it couldn't be the snake fort Oz wandered into. Snake forts look like large piles of sticks that the hyper-intelligent snakes that live in our woods build in order to have their offspring. They usually look similar to piles of hay, but they have been known to create tunnels as well. Oz got stuck in one of those tunnels before, and the snakes were fairly infuriated. Something else was rubbing me the wrong way. I knew that the bobbing head hadn't gotten into my apartment, as I had locked everything tight and you would be able to sense the stench of death before you even entered the building. Either way, I spent the rest of my day in a haze thinking about it. Well, when I woke up this morning, it finally dawned on me what was wrong and why the town felt so empty. Well, I am back. It's only been 2 days since I last posted, but a lot of shit has changed. Now my town is on the brink of not existing at all. I woke up Tuesday morning and realized that what had been bugging me was the seeming lack of other people in my town. Hell, when I came back to my apartment building the day before, it didn't seem like anyone else was there. Well, that's because the town population had dropped from 2,407 down to 407. I remember driving down Main Street and passing the small diner, the cafe, the town hall, the library, the grocery store, and every other building you can imagine a small East Coast town having. There was no sign of life anywhere. In all that time, I saw the old couple that owned the cafe on their deck, and Freddie Nixon smoking marijuana in his beaten Chevrolet Chevelle. On my way back to my house, I passed a horribly mutilated body sitting on the side of Garland Way towards the turnoff to Mulberry Lane. 2 crows were picking away at the man's intestines through the grotesque wound in his stomach. I didn't recognize the man. Once I got back to my apartment, I heard Miss Johnston's beagle whimpering from behind her apartment door. I figured that if I still heard him whimpering in a couple hours, I would take in the poor pup. For some reason, it was a lot colder than the past couple days. On Monday it had been almost 60 degrees, but Tuesday felt like it was maybe 45 degrees at most. Not 5 minutes after I came back home, Davis and Langdon had come by and informed me of the situation. I knew most of the town was gone, but they told me only 407 people were left. 2,000 people managed to vanish into thin air over the past 24 hours. A couple of their agents had vanished too, one of them being Moore. After looking through the confirmed missing in the town, we found out that Victoria, James, and Katie had all disappeared. We couldn't tell with Oz just yet. He could still be in the Snake Fort. Last time he was lost in there for almost 5 days, but he'd managed to make friends with most of the snakes. Now we were crossing into dangerous territory. Something of this extent had never happened in the strange history of this town. This had never happened. Ever. I talked with Davis over some scotch that afternoon about this, about how odd and disastrous this really was. I've been with this company for 11 years now, and I've never seen anything like this, he began. He took a massive swig of his scotch and polished off the entire glass before pouring himself some more. Hell, I bet none of this agency has. We've been around since 1805, yet I guarantee that none of them would have seen the day where 2,000 people just fell off the face of the earth. You really think that this is the weirdest thing that's happened in your agency's history? I asked him as I fiddled with my glass, mindlessly. Oh, I know it, he said timidly. We've seen a lot of shit over the years. Hell, I knew a guy who once saw a 20-foot-tall werewolfish monster climb Mount Rushmore before a chopper shot it down on top of Jefferson's head. I guarantee you he'd be shitting himself if we put him in this situation. There is no way that this happened, I told him, scoffing at his tale of a giant werewolf climbing Mount Rushmore like something out of the movie Rampage. Remember back in 2008 when the news reported that some of the heads on Mount Rushmore needed extensive maintenance? He asked me. They were repairing the claw marks. I didn't know what to say. Luckily for me, Davis continued talking. We've known how to fix every situation to date, except for this one. I am completely stuck on how this situation is going to be resolved, he informed me as he threw back even more whiskey. I looked over at Langdon, who was reading a novel entitled Pen Pal. What you reading? I asked him. A novel about a kid who keeps receiving letters from a creepy stranger, he told me. It's pretty decent and very well thought out. How do you feel about this shit show? I asked him. I think that we're stuck in a situation we can't fix, he sighed. I think that if we try, we will only make things worse. I think your town is in a great matter of trouble, and that the 400 people left alive should be cautious over the next few weeks. So, you think this shit can't be fixed? I asked him. I finally took a gulp of the smooth scotch that Davis had brought over. It was incredible, but it wasn't a thought that stayed on my mind for very long. I think that we're approaching an impasse, Langdon told me. He put down his book and stood up now. Yesterday, when we had you and your co-workers stand in front of the hole, we realized that none of you could be seen on any of the monitors. We don't know what exactly is happening at the site, but we know it's very dangerous and that this level of a threat has never been seen in this agency's history. So basically, because this hole showed up underneath one of the houses on Mulberry Street, about 80 or 90% of this town disappears into fucking thin air? I asked, in complete disbelief. I know that this must be hard to hear, Mark, but I assure you that we're trying to figure out what is going on as fast as possible, he assuaged. No, you're not, I barked. Even I didn't expect that, but nonetheless, it happened. Davis is sitting at my kitchen counter getting plastered off of the best goddamn scotch I've ever had, and you're reading a fucking book. Look, every other agent besides Watson is at the site right now, trying to figure out if anything else is due to come our way, Langdon assured me. Who in the shit is Watson? I asked. And why in the ever-loving fuck isn't he helping out too? He is talking to Lily right now, because you and her are the only ones left in this town that work at that goddamn grocery store, he said, clearly more irritated now. All of the others are missing, even fucking Bob who popped up just a few days ago. Davis poured himself yet another glass of scotch in the midst of my argument with Langdon. I'm positive he wasn't even fazed by what was going on. Well then why are you here? I asked. Why are you in my apartment? And why the fuck is Watson with Lily? We were checking in on you two, but clearly you have it covered on your own. Langdon turned to Davis and said, let's go try and save this town before we all end up descending straight down to hell. Davis rose to his feet and told me the scotch was mine. I'd end up finishing the entire bottle within the night. As Langdon walked out, he turned back to me and said, you know, you're lucky you don't share the town's name in your Reddit posts, or the town's population would drop by one more person. Believe me, we don't need that. The two of them left, and I just stood there alone in my apartment. I didn't move or speak, and I barely breathed the whole damn time. Eventually, I heard the faint whimpering of Miss Johnston's beagle, and remembered that 6 hours had passed since I promised myself I'd go check on the poor thing. I went down to the landlord's place and eventually found the key to her apartment. The dog raced out to greet me, and I gladly gave it a belly rub before I took it back to my apartment, and gave it a little bit of sliced turkey from my fridge and some water in a small Tupperware container. Later that day, I went back to Miss Johnston's apartment and grabbed the beagle's dog bed, food and water bowl, and his collar to reveal his name was Eddie. He didn't even bother with the dog bed. He snuggled with me to sleep that night. Yesterday wasn't much of anything, just me sitting around in a haze of depression mixed with disbelief over the fact that most of the people I knew were probably dead, and that I was stuck in a situation where there was nothing I could do except wait for the agents to come up with a plan. My mother and father are still alive, and my sister moved to Annapolis about 2 weeks before the vans even showed up, so at least that's a plus. Now we're here, and now that I've typed out just how helpless I've felt, I'm going to go try and fix this situation. Fuck waiting around for the agents to solve the puzzle. I've lived in this town longer than most of them have known it's existed. I hope to update you again soon. If I don't update within a week, then I guess I should have stayed home with Eddie.